Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Parents Who Game podcast by Mom's Den. My name is Ivona Nikolic, and today I am joined by one of my favorite esports content creators, Neri. Apart from being a content creator, she's also a very good friend of mine and someone whose stream I really enjoy watching. For those of you who don't know Neri quite yet, she is a single mom who managed to successfully turn her passion for making gaming-related community content into a career in communications. Neri actually shares 50-50 custody over her 11-year-old and 6-year-old. For a parent who streams and games, it pretty much means dedicating yourself to creating some awesome esports content during 1 week and playing as much Hearthstone Battlegrounds as she can while being super committed to family and responsibilities during the next week. Hi Neri, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's really exciting to be a part of this.
Yeah, thank you for wanting to be here. I think this is going to be super useful for all our fellow parents who game, for other content creators who are kind of struggling with finding enough time to do what they love while still hanging out with their families and just being cool parents as they are. Let me ask you a question. Actually, now that I talked about your job as a community content creator / communicator, can you tell me a little bit more about your communications job? How did you end up landing that sort of workplace, and how does your content creation relate to that?
Yeah, cool. So as you mentioned, I work in communications for local government, and I've been doing that for 4.5 years now, I think. And so my role focuses a lot on digital content. So I do a lot of social media, I do a lot of website management, and probably in the last few years, they've really got me moving into video creation as well. So getting out and about in town and doing some really cool interviews with local personalities and, sort of like news style snippets. And I sort of got really lucky with getting the role. I had been out of work for probably, 6-ish years or so because I'd had a child and then another child. So I was busy raising young children, and so I wasn't really out in conventional work, but I sort of kept myself busy by creating a lot of content online. First, I sort of started with World of Warcraft content and, Guildmaster content, and then it evolved into Mama Needs Manor, which was like a, parents who game blog that sort of covered the unique challenges that you have as a gamer parent.
It's such a good blog. I love it.
Oh, thanks. And then I sort of moved a little bit away from that and started doing a bit more like esports focused content. So at first I was doing a lot of tournaments for Hearthstone Australia, which is a Facebook group. And then I moved into Summoning Stones, sort of like fireside gatherings locally, where I did a lot of, so I'd do like sponsorship prospectuses to get sponsors on board for prizes, create the assets and all of that sort of things. And then actually sort of expanded even more and ran a community website for Heroes of the Storm here in Australia and New Zealand.
Wow.
So there was a lot of Blizzard sanctioned tournaments that my ex-husband did, and I sort of was focused more on creating all of like the video assets, the graphics. I did a lot of the blog writing, and then I sort of took over management of the website as well, and so that was pretty cool. We actually got to go to BlizzCon one year through that. So yeah,
that's amazing.
It was very exciting. And then I can't remember, I think we might have just started with an esports org at some point there. So I was sort of helping out bits and bobs. But basically it was just right place at the right time. One of the managers at where I work now happened to hear a conversation where people were talking about me and the stuff I'd done. And they're just like, hey, we actually need someone in our comms team. Why don't you get her to hand in a resume? And because I'd been doing all of that stuff, I was able to pull, things that I thought would be relevant to local government from my gaming career. And the rest is history.
It must have been challenging, though. It sounds at first like those two are just completely different niches. So this is super interesting to me.
Yeah. So I guess the rules of communication are sort of like, even though they seem so far apart, at the end of the day, you're still just communicating to people, and those skills definitely translated into the real world, essentially. So, I mean, obviously, like we might use slightly different language when we're writing formal like government media releases and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's still writing. So, and making videos, like whether you're doing a cool interview like this, or you've gone on site and shot a interview person to person, when you fire up Premiere at the end of the day, you're still kind of doing all the same things. So, I was really stoked to get the job, and it was definitely there was definitely a period of adjustment as well, because I had been out of the conventional workplace for so long, and I'd been working on my own for so long. While one part of me absolutely loved that I was surrounded by people and I was getting like that social fix that you don't sometimes necessarily get when you're, a stay-at-home mum.
Life does that to you.
Yeah. And on the other hand, I really struggled because there was an open plan office. There was so much talking and interruptions and whatnot. And, so it was definitely an adjustment period, but it has been worth it. And I would not change a thing.
Wow, that is quite a story. And thank you for sharing all of that with me. Wow, that is amazing. Like, I wouldn't just say that you were in the right place at the right time, because you've been out and about for a very long time. And when you're creating content, there's got to be something that happens over the course of years that just, triggers a series of events that just kind of pushes you forward in one direction or another. So, from that point of view, I think you've done a lot to actually make that happen. So, yeah, give yourself a little credit. It's not just luck. Yeah, definitely. So it's still, at the end of the day, the content that you're passionate about, regardless of whether it is a government job or the content creation and gaming. But speaking of gaming, I can already tell that you've had a lot of experience playing games. But when did it all begin? Do you remember maybe when you started gaming, what your first games were?
Yeah, so I think I was probably about 6 years old, which is crazy because I have a 6-year-old daughter who's kind of going down the same path. And I remember Dad got us for Christmas Sega Master System, and we were all obsessed with playing Alex the Kid in Miracle World, and then I became obsessed with the Sonic games. But sort of as we got older, I sort of went more into I was a bit more into sports and getting out and about, and my brother was kind of the nerdy one. And then somewhere along the lines, I don't know, I think it's when we got the PlayStation 2, that kind of switched, and I was obsessed with Final Fantasy, and he kind of went down a different path and doesn't really game anymore. But and then I found World of Warcraft, and the rest is history, really.
Yeah, WoW does that too. It just sucks you in and takes about 15 years of your life, and you don't even notice.
Yes. Mm-hmm, it does.
Definitely something that can happen with that game. So how is that different to the games that you play today, or is it different? Do you still play World of Warcraft, or have you moved on maybe to some different games?
So I keep telling myself that I want to go back to World of Warcraft, especially with Shadowlands coming out very soon, but I still haven't opened up the game. And these days I definitely just play a lot more Hearthstone Battlegrounds. It's the time limit of the games is perfect. I get my competitive fix. It's still a little bit of RNG, which I am a big fan of in there. So that's pretty much, scratching that gaming itch that I have.
Yeah, well, definitely it is a game that can occupy you for a very long time. Maybe not for as long of a time as World of Warcraft, but it has its own things that just make you want to play the game more and more. And I've been there with Hearthstone and with WoW. Definitely, I can relate to that. So you've definitely been involved into plenty of games and plenty of content creation as an esports and as a Twitch content creator. So can you tell me more about how that connects or doesn't connect to your parenting life? It must be really challenging to be a parent, a streamer, someone who has a full-time job, and content creator and a competitor. Like, what's your greatest challenge when it comes to that kind of life? Can you tell me more about maybe your daily routine, or how you make it all work?
Sure. So back in the day when I was married, obviously, we would take turns, and it was about supporting each other and taking time to do, to make sure that each of us is, achieving our gaming goals essentially. But these days it's just me when I have the kids. There's no one else to fall back on, so I need to make sure that I'm sort of there and present. So on my weeks when I have the kids, I definitely don't get anywhere near pretty much any gaming done, especially if it's a busy week like this one. And for me, I just got to be cool with that. Like, that's just, it is what it is. Like, my kids and my career are more of a priority than Hearthstone Battlegrounds, as much as I wish it wasn't sometimes. And then in the next week, I sort of just catch up. Like, I've gone from having an absolutely chockers schedule to get home from work, cook up some dinner, fire up Hearthstone and play for like the next 5 hours. So, I guess probably routine-wise, I think probably the most important thing is just knowing your limits. Yeah. Like, I might tell myself, cool, I'm going to stream this week. I'm totally going to do it. Like, the kids will be in bed by 8:30. I can absolutely get a couple of hours in, but I need to sort of go, actually, hang on, I'm really heckin' tired. I really should probably, go to bed. Otherwise, it's kind of like a snowball effect of fatigue. And by the end of the week, I'm just a shell of a person.
Yeah, and borrowing time from tomorrow never really works out.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a lesson that I've had to really learn in the past, like 11 months or so, is that, you can't, what's the saying? You can't pour from an empty cup. So, I've really got to make sure that I'm taking time out for me. And, I don't want to sleep. I want to stay up and game all night, but I'm 34 now. I don't recover well from that.
Yeah, it's difficult, but like this unique situation probably took some time to adjust to. Did you, like, when you found yourself, just like being with the kids one week and having that free time in the next week, was it an easy adjustment for you, or was it weird at the beginning?
I think it was, I thought it was going to be easy, and I suppose, it was easy in one way, in that, I've got a week to recharge, but I sort of found myself with that initial free time. I was like, I have so much free time. And so gaming actually completely fell by the wayside, because I was dealing with the, emotions that come with separating. And also, like, I'm like, I have all this free time. I can go out, I can have fun, I can go to mate's house. And I found myself sort of like filling my life with like all of these social things that I probably wasn't necessarily doing before. So yeah, there was a process to get to where I am with getting back into my content creation, because I wasn't necessarily in the right headspace originally to be streaming and content creating, because I just kind of wanted to, I needed to take a breather and sort of, focus on what was really important with me, which was my kids and reconnecting with friends and, doing all that stuff. And then the gaming sort of come back later, and now that I've sort of sat back and gone, okay, I've had my party girl phase. It's time to like chill again. It's like, well, yes, I still do want to create content, and I might not be able to do it at such the level I was before. And as, viewers of my stream are probably very aware, I am not the most reliable of people these days. But I sort of had to just get to peace with that. It's not like, well, I can't stream for 40 hours a week, so I might as well quit. I haven't had to go through it. It's like, you know what? If I manage to stream 4 hours this week, that's a win. Chalk it up to success. There was a process to get to there, though.
Yeah, I've gone through the exact same thing between like deciding whether to go like full time or not stream at all. But sometimes you just have to deal with the fact that there has to be a balance, and also that there's a good time for everything. Like, not every stage of life is good for content creation. Obviously, all parts of life should be good for connecting with your family, with your friends. Everything has to be there in moderation. But yeah, speaking of kids, they are a lot older than my kid, so they can understand kind of what's happening with your gaming, with your streaming. How do they react to that? Are they maybe a part of that? Are they your supporters? Are they like, oh, please, mom, don't do that? How do kids these days react to that when they understand the streaming world and gaming and content creation?
My kids have been great with it. So obviously it's 4:30 p.m. here local time, and it is my week with them. So they're off in another room just doing their own thing, ironically playing games. And they understand probably between streaming, because, when my ex-husband used to run tournaments, it was like, don't go in the studio room because, you know, you can't have little kids walking behind a broadcast with a couple of thousand people. So they're pretty chill about that. And one of the real positives, I think, so my 11-year-old, he's really into it as well. Like, he's been asking me, you know, Mum, can you teach me how to edit videos? He's got his own little YouTube channel. And we kind of have, it's kind of like a way to connect. Like, we don't play the same games at all, but I think he really likes that he has a mum that he can say, oh, Mum, you know, I've been playing this game called Unturned and you do this. And he likes that I understand that, and I kind of understand the culture around it, and I get the memes as well, which sometimes isn't good for him because I bust him for it. But, you know, so we have that unique way of connecting with each other. But it also goes the other way as well. Like, there's sort of been a few unhealthy habits that can be formed too, because, you know, like, it's really easy to just be like, cool, I'm going to play some games. Kids are playing some games. And then the next thing you know, 2 hours have passed. And then, you know, you start having issues around too much screen time and whatnot. Yeah. So they're pretty good with it. I guess, like, they're good, they understand it and whatnot, but, you know, there's also extra things to be mindful of too.
Yeah, and
when they're following in my footsteps.
It's just not, I don't think you should be worried about that so much, because you do have a lot of valuable things that you're offering to them. I'm actually very impressed that your 11-year-old is already into video editing and creation. Personally, I would have loved to have been at that mindset when I was 11. So I think you're actually giving them the opportunity to think ahead and do something super meaningful. And with you doing all that stuff, they can realize that, you know, content creation isn't all that difficult. Streaming world sometimes seems impossible to reach from a viewer's point of view. They see someone in front of the camera and they're like, oh, I could never do that, that's probably too difficult. But it's easier than you think, and it's important for kids to know that they can be a part of creating something, and it's not just something that is reserved for people who already either have an esports gaming background or tons of money to spend on equipment or a bunch of time. So it's good that you're making that a reality for them.
Yeah, thanks. And I also like to, probably because I'm a little bit more in like the streaming culture and YouTube culture and whatnot, I sort of know what things to be mindful of as well. So I'm like sort of extra cautious when it comes to like, you know, cyber safety and whatnot, because I've seen firsthand what can happen, you know, and how vicious people can sometimes be on the internet. So I'm trying to really take steps to make sure that he can, you know, protect himself from that and not be caught off guard. And, you know, sometimes I've got other parent friends who they just don't understand any of that stuff, and they just let their kids sort of go wild, if that makes sense. And, you know, then they have a whole, you know, then they're not really sure how to handle it when it pops up. So, you know, it's definitely have some positives as well.
Yeah, it's something to be aware of, and it's good for kids to have that mindset very early on. And as you said, some parents are just not aware of it. They think it may not be a thing, or that it may not be able to reach their kids just because their kids are at home and safe with them. But that's not the case. Internet security is super, super important, and it's great that you're educated enough to, you know, think about it and be aware when it happens. And I'm sure that other parents who are listening to this who haven't thought about it before maybe realize that, you know, it's kind of needed to do that kind of conversation with your kids, to just, you know, let them know that it exists, and maybe to look up some more things about it so they know how to talk to their kids about cybersecurity overall.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of fantastic resources out there. I think it depends probably on what country you're in, but here in Australia there is definitely a lot of, you know, resources, and through schools and stuff as well. They're really, really good about it, which is fantastic to see that they're kind of adapting with the times.
I do have another question for you. When it comes to our listeners as in viewers who are trying to kind of balance their gaming life and their family life, they must have tons of questions, but if you could give them like one most important advice to take in from today's conversation, what would it be? What do you think is the most important thing that can help a parent still achieve their passions, still do what they love while they're being connected to their family, their partners, their friends?
Yeah, I think probably my number one piece of advice would just be to know your limits. Like, it's really easy to want to push, but like we said earlier, you can't pour from an empty cup. So, you know, you sort of need to be mindful on probably like not only how you're feeling yourself, but also, you know, listen to what your family members are saying as well. Like, sometimes it's easy to just sort of go, it's fine. Like they'll deal with it or they'll handle it, but it can, erode things over time. So really know your limits. And sometimes it might necessarily mean making the hard decision to cut back on what you're doing, because obviously you can't cut back on time with your kids. That's not ideal. Don't do that. But it's like, you might just have to adjust your goalposts a little bit, and adjust what you're trying to achieve. And sometimes it sucks, but it is unfortunately the reality of being an adult and being a parent. Like the little kid, like the kiddos have got to come first, and they're not going to really understand. You might be like, yeah, cool, I'm Twitch partner now, but you've missed a bunch of stuff that your kids have been doing. So you've got to really kind of weigh up what's more important to you.
Yeah, balance is definitely super important. So we've talked about content creation a lot, and our viewers have had the opportunity to hear a lot about you doing it. But where can they see you doing that? Where can they find you on social media, and what kind of content are you making these days?
Yeah, cool. So you can find me mostly on twitch.tv/Nerisella, where I stream a lot of Hearthstone Battlegrounds, and it's pretty low quality stuff. Let's be real. I'm only seeing it around 6K MMR, so you're not going to be seeing game breaking plays by any means, but we do like to chill out and have some fun and just kick back and relax. You can also find me on Twitter at Nerisella. I also try to upload a few videos here and there to YouTube. At the moment, they're kind of just sort of stream highlights, but I have some guides and stuff up there as well. And if you just search Nerisella, you should find me, hopefully. But yeah, that's me. And you can also find me very periodically blogging over at neriapproves.wordpress.com. It's kind of like a hodgepodge mix of old WoW content and just a little bit of like IRL stuff. So if you're into reading, feel free to check it out.
All right. Thank you so much for letting me know about
pleasure.
all of this. And most of all, thank you for taking the time of your weekend to come here today and talk to me and give all these tips to have more time to do what they love and to be able to take some of their time to maybe do something like this. That's going to be it for this week. Neri, thank you so much for being here today with us. And for everyone who's listening, thank you for taking the time to listen to episode 2 of this podcast. I hope it's been useful to you. Neri has given us plenty of tips that I think are useful for not only parents, but also people who are busy in their own way and who are trying to find their way and the time to just balance their life and still do something that they love while being committed to work and their families.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I highly encourage you to check out Neri's content. You can find all the links down below in the description. If you've enjoyed this podcast, feel free to subscribe to this channel and leave a like to this video so other people can have an easier time finding it. Thanks again so much, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.